Welcome to the Hourly Podcast. In today's episode, Steve Browne, Chief People Officer at Rosas, shares insights of the evolution of workforce dynamics, the importance of a people-first approach, and the integration of AI in HR practices. He discusses the shifts in employee expectations and the need for employers to adopt new technologies and workforce trends. Steve emphasizes the significance of consistency and retention in building a strong company culture while also reflecting on his personal career journey and the future of work. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by JoJo, an AI virtual recruiter powered by Sprockets. Designed for the hourly workforce, JoJo works 24/7 to source, screen, and schedule interviews with the best applicants for your business. JoJo helps reduce employee turnover and time spent hiring so you and your team can focus on other important tasks. To learn more, head to sprockets.ai/JoJo.
Thank you so much, Steve, for being on the podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me.
And for those that don't know who you are or what line of work you're in or what company you represent, tell us a little bit about that high level.
I'm not a big title person, but technically, I'm the Chief People Officer for La Rosa's Incorporated. We're a regional pizzeria in Greater Cincinnati, primarily Greater Cincinnati. We have 64 locations total, a mix of corporate stores and franchise stores, and we've been around for 70 years.
Wow, 70 years. How long have you been there for?
18.
18. How have you seen things progress over the course of those 18 years?
I've seen us progress in wonderful ways because, we went through a global situation a few years ago. No one ever anticipated that. But I think we've seen a big shift in the workforce in general. There's fewer people. What's really interesting, AJ, I've been doing this far too long in HR. They projected the labor shortage in 2010. And then 2008, the economic crash happened, and all of a sudden there's all these people. There really weren't. They just shifted and were available. So the labor shortage that we're experiencing now in 2024 was actually ready to happen in 2010. There was just fewer people. And then as work changed in 2020, the difference between the type of work that we do in many companies is we never closed, not one day. And we were very fortunate. We didn't have any reductions in force or anything like that. And we were doing things like having flexible schedules far before the pandemic hit. We were doing things with, I think when I first came here, our first measurement was turnover. What's going wrong? Everything was what was wrong. Now we measure retention. Why are people staying? How can people stay with us? And while they're here, during the time that they're here, how can we make it great for when we're here? We were very fortunate when, it was funny, when I said 18 years, I'm one of the least tenured people here.
Wow.
We have regular 20, 30, 40, and since I've been here, we've had 250-year people. It's just a different type of company.
Wow. And what do you think makes that the case, right? So a lot of our listeners are trying maybe earlier on than having a 64 location group that's been around for a long time. If you had to start from scratch, would you start building that into the locations and building that into corporate?
I think the thing that has made us different is we've been a people first company before it was popular to be people first. It's a family company. And the difference is the family runs the business. Mr. La Rosa is still around. He's 94. And he's wonderful. But the way he started the company 70 years ago legitimately was, I take care of my people and my guests. Those are not held by economic downturns. Those aren't held by generational shifts. Those are good, solid, foundational things for a company. So consistency, more than fairness, I think, is a big differentiator for us. It's not that we aren't fair. We are. But consistency is far more easy to sustain, and it allows for people to be different. The big shift, though, I would say coming in is we're focusing more on what people can bring to the table versus what they don't. In the past, it was, AJ doesn't do this. We're like, I know. And you know what? He knows that too.
Mm.
Uh, so we're really trying to be strengths-based to say, what strengths do you bring, AJ, and what you don't have? We're going to supplement. We've been more cognizant of that. And if I would have known that 18 years ago and started out with it, I think we'd be even farther than we are now.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, good lesson learned there. Talk to me a little bit about you said something about the shift of the workforce. And you quoted that there was a prediction that there was going to be a change in 2010. Didn't happen because of '08. What do you foresee kind of the next shift of the workforce looking like? Like if you had to project out 18 years into the future, what are some things you see? I'm curious.
I think it's time for the employers to shift. The
Mm,
employees shifted. So when the pandemic hit, all of the things I remember, again, way older, I remember we would fight about this thing called telecommuting,
mm,
hybrid work, remote work. Then our hand was forced. Now we learned that we can work anywhere. So employers are going to have to shift because the technology with the AI is already outpacing us. And we have to
mm,
learn how to embrace it and use it instead of being fearful of it. And then see how it applies to our company, not to eliminate positions, but to evolve positions. The other thing I think that has to shift is quit having a report card mentality and have a development mentality. How do I develop AJ for AJ? How do I develop Steve for Steve? How do I develop Susie for Susie? But not, hey, I'm going to take a report card to measure things that have happened 6 months ago.
yeah.
So old school, doesn't work. And the other thing is, you're going to have a much more fluid workforce from now on. People are
Mm,
not going to stay as long as I have stayed here. And not that they can't or not that there won't be exceptions, but I love that employees now are making more career management decisions. In the past, they didn't. It was work because of necessity. Now I think it's changed to and will continue to change to work because I want to, where I want to, when I want to.
mm. Yeah, and talk to me a little bit more about AI. I think that that's a really interesting piece. And I've had a front row seat to the rise of AI over the last 10 years in HR.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you now, it's a lot easier to talk to HR leaders about AI than a decade ago. I
Sure.
remember, going to SHRM events and speaking about the development of AI, years and years ago, to rooms of HR leaders. And I felt like I would leave being chased out by a pitchfork. And now, even the most human of all human resources, people are talking about it, right? So, from your perspective, seeing a lot of different labor markets, a lot of technology shift, even at your 18 years at the company, how do you think about that? Like, were you a skeptic in the beginning? Talk to me about just your journey with AI.
I think similar to all tech that's happened over my career, the first thing is fear. No matter what you do, it comes out as
Yeah.
fear. Uh, I remember when social media hit in '07 and '08, and people were like, here's the first thing was, let's develop a policy to eliminate this. And what
Mm,
was funny is people were sitting on their phones going, hey, they're telling me I can't be on social media.
right.
We were just clueless. We weren't connected to what the technology could do. We were fearful of what it wasn't.
Mm,
So I think, is bringing efficiency and expediency and a level of content so quickly that it's just needed. I'll give you a great example. My senior HR manager is very technology adept, more than I am. And
mm,
she says, hey, I'm going to check this out and I'm going to put it through ChatGPT right off the bat. So we're looking at how to do job descriptions through ChatGPT or whatever, just AI
yeah. Yeah.
tools. How do I, if I need to write a handbook, what should I have a handbook have it? And it just does it.
Yeah.
Now you have to go in and put the nuance. I think the one piece that's missing, and I don't think you should fully dive into any technology, is the human factor of nuance. What's the culture like at your company? It's not progressed that far. I don't know that it will because it's a machine. It's learning quickly and it can learn faster than I can, but it doesn't understand the differences between talking to somebody in Cincinnati and talking to somebody in Charlotte at the same time.
Right. Right. And then do you think from your vantage point, seeing the accelerated rate of technology, that phenomenon changing? Like the AI gets so good that it does understand those things.
Possible, very possible. It's interesting to watch. I think there should always be parameters for it to be used.
Mm,
But I think those parameters have to evolve. When you look at the workplace as a whole, the companies that aren't evolving, the companies that are still more rigid and structured are
right.
not going to be around. The ones who are nimble, I hate the word pivot, hated it when it came out. Nimble is, this is in front of me, how do I respond? This is in front of me, how do I strategically look ahead?
Yeah.
So I think from an HR perspective, we have to be far more strategic daily, not strategic because you sit at a certain position, and uh, go ride with the changes. Be more flexible.
Yeah. What's interesting in my line of work, there's a lot of discussion around generative AI versus agentic AI. And
Okay.
agentic AI is when, just for our listeners that may not know the term, it's when AI takes agency over a decision.
Mm,
So up into this point, AI has done a lot of things to your point, Steve, like get you 95% of the way. And
yeah,
then you make adjustments, and the better the AI gets, the closer to 100%, but it never crosses that line, right? There's always a human involved. And I think there's a temptation from the technologist perspective, myself included, to kind of test the boundaries of how agentic AI can impact staffing
sure.
within restaurants. Because, the extreme of it is that instead of AI helping create job posts, push out to job boards, algorithmically find the best way to sponsor job postings, bring you through, applicant tracking system, and, give you kind of feedback afterwards for there to be, or schedule the interview for a human decision. Instead of all of that, the AI takes it over the goal line and determines if that person should work for your company. And then that person just shows up.
Yeah, I think it's going to come to some extent. The challenge is, um, in the end, regardless of AI, the same two people for the same job following all the parameters of the algorithm are still different. They're going to bring biases, they're going to bring filters, they're going to bring experiences. Now, do I think it could get there to help it understand how to assess and value the experience that's presented? Yes, I think it's close. But I just want to see where it goes. And would it be great? Now, uh, there's an assessment out there called the predictive index, and there's
Yep.
a lot of assessments out there. And the people who are disciples of predictive index are like, oh, and you're like, yeah, that's descriptive, 95%. The last 5%,
Right.
there's still that human thing in there somehow.
Right. Yeah. Super interesting. Super interesting. Yeah, and it goes to like that, is just one example of the hiring motion, but across all of people practices, right?
Yeah,
Because there's a lot of things that if you were to give agency to the technology of decision around people making, it gets tricky really quick, right? There's a lot of
yes.
quicksand around, right? And I don't think we're going to solve anything, the world's problems, or how AI is going to impact HR in this call. But what I'm hearing from you, and feel free to chime in, of course, is like you're seeing a lot of new things. AI is here, likely to stay,
Right.
and it feels like you're excited to kind of see what that next frontier is, but still always think that a human's going to be involved in all those decisions. Is that
I
an
do.
accurate? Yeah.
I do. I'll give you a non-HR example. Right now, when you ask your phone a question,
Yep.
it doesn't go out to a website anymore. It pulls up the AI. It says, "Hey, I think you're thinking this," and I'm like, "Oh, you know
Right.
what? You you heard what I was. You caught my question in the way I was asking it." And it's not that if you asked the same question, it wouldn't be close to that same answer, but I know that it would have the answer for you. So I think as long as there's that uh, way to review, that way
Mm.
to assess, that way to consider, I think honestly that helps workforces because I'm spending less time on the stuff that gets me to that point, and then by having that generated for me, I can assess I can get strategic right away.
Yeah,
If it
totally.
did a comp analysis for us, if I go, here's all our salaries, I'm looking for this, and I want this national data, and it can do it in seconds, why wouldn't I do that?
Right. Right. Yeah, 100%. No, totally get it. And we are going to have to schedule another time to talk about this, maybe a part 2 for our audience, because I love talking about this and I feel like we could do it for days and days. But we are coming up on time, and I asked the same question to all guests, and that's, what was your first hourly job? And were you fired from that job, or did you leave gracefully?
My first hourly job was camp counselor at a
Mm.
basketball camp, and I did a lot of camp counseling. And no, was not fired. I left on my own, loved it. Um, those were the first ones. And then I'll throw it in there real quick. I worked at Cedar Point in food service.
Yep.
And no, I was one of the 5% that didn't get turned over.
Wow. Nice. I like it. I like it. And if somebody wants to learn more about you or the company, what's the best way to do that?
At our company, it'd be larosas.com, larosas.com. Great company, honest to goodness, great company. And if you want to find out more about me, best part is probably LinkedIn. And look me up there. Be glad to interact with you.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
All right, AJ, thank you.